Well, the usual thing. I've had an intense interest in monetary policy, fiscal policy, as well as foreign policy. So I've already introduced what I do every 2 years, the bill to get out of the UN and de-internationalize. I don't like this internationalization, whether it's financial or political. So that usually gets a lot of support from the conservative community, and everybody expects me to do it. But also, I've had a lot of interest in monetary policy, and I've already introduced bills dealing with the Federal Reserve. Ultimately, we should get rid of the Federal Reserve. That's not going to happen soon. It might self-destruct the way it's going, but there will be another bill introduced shortly that I'm working on that will be at least allowing Congress some oversight and some legal permission to audit the Federal Reserve. Right now, we're not allowed. They're exempted from audit. And under today's circumstances, where they're literally creating trillions of dollars out of thin air and subsidizing and helping their friends in the banking industry and corporations, it's time the American people knew what was going on, but it's up to the Congress to demand that. So those are the events that I spend time on. I'm on the Financial Services, which is the old Banking Committee. I've always been on that committee. I'm also on the Joint Economic Committee, dealing just with economic policy. And for instance, next week, Paul Volcker will be before our committee. So, and Bernanke, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, comes both before the Joint Economic Committee as well as the Banking Committee. But also I'm on Foreign Affairs Committee, International Relations, and I find that very important because I think it's the overseas commitment which has been one of the major financial burdens to us that helped precipitate our crisis. Of course, the welfare state here at home is a major burden as well, but a lot of times neither conservatives or liberals want to deal with overseas expenditures. Generally, it's endorsed by both parties, and yet I think the traditional conservative constitutional position is that we should be very careful with overseas spending as well. Yeah, there's some tax cuts in there. You know, they estimate maybe 30% are tax cuts, and most of those are probably very, very good. If that's all we were doing, I'd have been anxious to vote for it. But even that isn't the best way to do it. My suggestion was just to suspend, as far as I'm concerned, for the purpose of making it permanent, just suspend income taxes and payroll taxes. Do that for a year or two. That would put money right into the hands of the people, rather than putting it in the hands of the government. The government doesn't know how to spend this money, and it supports a special interest. But even with these tax decreases that they have in the stimulus package, if we didn't have all the spending, it would be best done by cutting spending at the same time. Cutting spending so much that you literally could reduce the deficit and then take care of the tax cuts as well. And I think politically it will eventually be easier to cut spending overseas than it will be here at home. Why do we have to pay to blow up bridges and pay to rebuild them and then have nothing but corruption and people steal the money from us and nobody even has oversight of that money? So my suggestion is that we cut the spending overseas, cut the taxes, and recognize the fact that people ought to save money and pay their debt down rather than saying, oh, this is good, keep prices of houses high, this stimulate houses, and this encourage people to buy houses. Well, they'll buy houses when the prices go down, but we didn't stimulate anything with that bill other than the growth of government. I personally wouldn't take it. I don't think it's a good idea because the obligation is always so much greater than it would be if you didn't have to take it. The money should come back to us, but it should come back to us through reduction of taxes. It's sort of like talking about the highway fund. Should we take our highway funds back? They take highway funds from us and they go to Washington and then they divvy them up, and I say, yeah, we ought to try to get some of our highway funds back. But the better program would be never take the money. All the highway taxes stay in Texas and let us take care of our own highways. That's what we should do. So under these circumstances, I personally wouldn't do it and wouldn't want it, but I'm not highly critical of somebody that said, they've taken so much from us. I'm against the bill, but if they're going to send that money back, maybe take it. But the real downside of that is the strings attached. And I've had small cities in my congressional district where I would talk to them along this line, and they say, well, I'm not taking it because I don't want the strings attached, no matter how you might want to justify. And I admire people that take that position. And soon it won't matter because the federal government is broke and the dollar's not going to be buying much anymore, so it'd be better that the states concentrate on their plans on how they're going to manage their affairs when the federal government is totally bankrupt. Oh yeah, it's going to make it much worse. We got into trouble because we spent too much and we borrowed too much and we printed too much. And they think they're going to get out of the trouble by spending and borrowing and printing money. And outside of what the Congress does, we have to realize that the interference in the market is done in a major way by the Federal Reserve System. They're the ones who are injecting trillions of dollars, and we never know where it's going or what it's accomplishing. For the most part, it's only lining the pockets of a few special individuals and hurting the people. So it's the stimulus package. This whole thing is just making it much worse, and the deficit is exploding. And the only thing that hasn't exploded yet is inflation, but we just had inflation statistics yesterday. Prices of producer prices much higher than they anticipated. That the last month's increases were going up at an annualized 9% rate. This is very, very significant. Most people think when you have a very, very weak economy, demand is so low, prices will go down. But that's not necessarily true. All you have to do is go into a third world nation and you can have runaway inflation and you can have a very weak economy and you can have a Zimbabwe type economy and not in the United States, that had never happened. Well, if you keep printing the money, it can happen. If the confidence is lost in the dollar, we could end up in the same kind of mess that a third world nation has ended up in.